It's important to understand that the federal government is a creation of the states. Like when these people talk about, one person, one vote, we're a democracy. No, we are a federalist constitutional republic which uses democratic processes to both select representatives and for those representatives to vote with respect to legislation. That's what we are. We are a republic of republics. Each individual state is actually its own republic. And yes, we all fall under the jurisdiction of the federal government, but the federal government is supposed to be limited according to Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, where it actually lays out the various powers of Congress. And it talks about the duties and responsibilities of the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. But then you dig in a little bit deeper and you look at the Bill of Rights. And now all of a sudden we realize that we're expressing additional restrictions on federal power. And we did this very specifically because originally that wasn't supposed to be a part of the bill. In fact, originally, a lot of the founders thought, well, the Bill of Rights isn't necessary because the powers afforded to the federal government are so limited and enumerated as to suggest that, well, of course, the federal government can't take your guns. Of course, the federal government can't infringe on your freedom of speech or your freedom of course it can't do that, because nowhere in the enumerated powers of the federal government does it give them such authority. And yet, people like George Mason out of Virginia and others were so worried about federal overreach that they insisted upon it so there could be no doubt. Now, one of the things that you see in the Bill of Rights is the 10th Amendment. Now, let's look at what the 10th Amendment says, because again, this is important, right? The 10th Amendment specifically states, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So what this is expressly stating, in case it wasn't clear enough in Article 1, Section 8, is that if the federal government has not been authorized through the Constitution to carry out a certain function, well then the decision-making process lies either with the state or the people themselves. And the Ninth Amendment actually made some suggestions with respect to individual liberty as well, and essentially instructing the federal government to not assume that because a power hasn't been, or because a right or liberty hasn't been expressly permitted to the people, that they therefore don't have it. Right? So the onus of responsibility on all of this was to say, federal government, you are being created to do very, very specific things. This is it. This is your jurisdiction. Right? When we talk about the general welfare clause, that doesn't mean that the federal government can do anything it wants, provided it believes it's within the general welfare of the country. If the general welfare clause meant that, you really wouldn't need any other parts of the Constitution listing out powers. You would just say, as long as the federal government determined it was in the general welfare, they could do what they want. Right? So no, they're allowed to apply the general welfare clause to their enumerated powers. It's the same thing with the supremacy clause. I will watch people say all the time, like, don't you know about the supremacy clause, Nick? Yes, I do. And the supremacy clause doesn't mean anything the federal government does is constitutional and therefore legal and superior to state law. What it means is that insofar as the federal government has jurisdiction over a particular issue, then what it says in that case is supreme. But it can't just say whatever it wants and then appeal to the supremacy clause. Right? These are important things to understand, because I will hear a lot of people, I will hear a lot of college students either reference the supremacy clause or they will reference the general welfare clause as a broad grant of power to the federal government. That's just not accurate. It's the same thing with the necessary and proper clause. Necessary and proper clause gives the federal government to do other things insofar as it is necessary and proper to carry out their enumerated powers. But then you'll have a leftist come in and say, well, they're supposed to provide for the general welfare. So if anything they do that provides for the general welfare is necessary and proper. Not accurate. There is no way the founders would have signed on to a document that said that the federal government could do whatever it wanted, provided that it was in the general welfare and that the federal government considered it necessary and proper.